Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Arif. So today I'll be presenting the finding from my analysis on how Trump's tariff reshape both global supply chains and Malaysia trade opportunities. This topic is significant because it shows how one country's policy, like this case, the United States country, can trigger a ripple effect towards another country across the world, especially in interconnect supply chains like electronic, machinery and logistics. So here's how I'll structure my presentation. So first one, I briefly explain the context of the United States, China tariff, and then I'll dive into three major effects, which is the first one is the realignment of global supply chains. The second one is trade diversion and bypass strategies, and lastly, reshoring and the bottleneck it causes. And finally, I wrap up with insight on what this all means for Malaysia and its industry. In this context, in 2018, the Trump administration imposed 35% tariff on around 250 billion US dollar worth of imports from China, and China retaliated with tariff of its own, targeting major US products such as soybeans, cars, and chemicals item. The outcome was dramatic. US import from China fell by around 35% within 2 years, but the story didn't end there. Other countries, including Malaysia, stepped into the gap, and Malaysia export to the US actually grew by more than 11% in 2019. This set the stage for both new opportunities and new risks to the market. The first major effect was the realignment of global supply chain. Globally, firms started adopting what's called the China Plus One strategy. Instead of putting all their operation in China, they spread them out, often to countries like Vietnam, Mexico, or Malaysia. Companies like Apple shifted part of their production to India and Vietnam, while garment and footwear producer moved into Southeast Asia, which is ASEAN part. And from Malaysia, this meant export to the US reached almost 96 billion ringgit in 2019, the highest in more than a decade, over than 10 years. And over half of this came from the electronics and electrical sector, especially semiconductor. Foreign investment also rose. Big players such as Micron expanded operation in Penang, strengthening Malaysia's role in the global electronics supply chain. So overall, Malaysia gained momentum, but it also had to deal with infrastructure and talent challenges to support the sudden growth. So we go to the effect number 2, which is trade diversion and bypass. When tariff raises the cost of China imports, US companies switch suppliers to the countries like Vietnam, Mexico, and Malaysia suddenly became more attractive. So this meant Malaysia export to the US increased by 5.5% in 2019. Electronics again made up the largest share, proving how central this sector is to Malaysia's global trade. But trade diversion wasn't all smooth sailing. Some firms tried to reroute Chinese goods through third country with minimal charge just to dodge tariff. This created compliance risks. Custom authorities worldwide, including in the United States, and it became stricter with rules of origin. And for Malaysian exporter, this meant they had to invest in stronger documentation and governance. Those who could prove substantial transformation of their goods gained credibility and long-term contracts. Those who couldn't risk penalties and reputational those who could not risk penalties and reputational damage. And the third effect was the trend toward reshoring and nearshoring. Some American companies, especially in the automotive and electronic sector, moved production closer to their home, either to Mexico or back to the United States itself. This didn't mean a complete exit from Asia, but it did mean fewer opportunities for some countries. Malaysia benefited in semiconductor, but industry like automotive largely bypassed us and went straight to the Mexico. At the same time, the sudden rerouting of global supply chains caused bottleneck. Malaysia's port, particularly Penang and Penang, saw higher congestion, lead time stretch, cost increase, and SMEs found it hard to carry the extra inventory needed to cope with the delays. So while Malaysia gained in some areas, it also felt and pressure of this new supply chain stress. So from these three effects, we can draw several insight. First, Malaysia must position itself firmly in the China Plus One strategy by offering reliable alternative to firms diversifying from China. Secondly, compliance system must be strengthened. Exporters need to prove their goods and genuinely Malaysian. And the third one is infrastructure upgrades are essential to handle higher trade volumes from capacity to digital custom. And the fourth one is Malaysia must continue to develop its workforce, especially in advanced manufacturing and automation. And finally, we need to diversify our export markets beyond the United States, leveraging ASEAN and agreement like the RCEP. To conclude, Trump's tariff disrupt global supply chains on an unprecedented scale. For Malaysia, they open new doors, especially in electronic export and foreign investment. But they also brought challenges such as a conjunction, compliance pressure, and missed opportunities in certain industry. So the lesson for Malaysia is clear, which is to stay competitive. We must build resilience. That means diversifying export markets, upgrading infrastructure, and continuously investing in skills and technology. That's all for me. I hope you learned some information through my presentation. So yeah, thank you.